He is one of the best forwards in the European football scene, and surely a player that several clubs will fight over in the upcoming summer transfer market. $100 million clause for a Victor Gyokeres who continues to break records but has not always been so exposed. He has been working in the shadows for a long time, and some consider that his breakthrough has been somewhat late. Let's see what the story of this Swedish goalscorer Victor Gyokeres has been. Let's go for it. Victor Gyokeres was born on June 4, 1998, in Stockholm, Sweden, in the same homeland as another great legend of European football, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, of course the idol of many children in Sweden. And for Victor Gyokeres, it was no different. He was his reference, his personal and professional idol. He wanted to be a footballer, but he also wanted to resemble Zlatan Ibrahimovic as much as possible. In fact, both are forwards. Both share certain traits in their play. They are obviously very different, and Gyokeres still has a way to go to reach what Zlatan Ibrahimovic was in the world of football. But that physical ability, that capacity to make certain acrobatic shots, that power they both have, and above all, the goal-scoring instinct of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which Victor Gyokeres also possesses. A boy, a young lad who started at this club we see in the image with that IFK Aspudentelis jersey. That was his first club. It was a local club in Stockholm, before moving to a club where he began to develop much more from the youth category. Broma Pokarna signed him when he was only 15 years old, and by 17 he had already debuted with the first team. He spent 3 seasons with this Swedish team, especially standing out in the 16-17 season, in which he helped his team return to the Swedish First Division, from which they had detached a few years earlier. He scored 13 goals and was one of the key figures in the attack of Broma Pokarna, which returned to the Swedish First Division, but this time it would do so the following season without Victor Gyokeres, a Gyokeres for whom the big teams in Sweden and Norway were already starting to fight over, already starting to bid at the end of 2017. But then a team appears, a project that has been attractive to young people for many years. A team that usually has a good eye for great prospects at the European level, like Brighton, the Seagulls, which is currently a standard bearer in the Premier League. It has been several years playing in the top tier of the Premier League, playing attractive football and, as I said, scanning the European market very well in search of thousands of young talents. In Gyokeres' case, they had that good eye for a player who, at 19 years old, had been a revelation in the second division, and the big teams in the area were already starting to fight over him. The problem is that he never quite fit into the different philosophies of the various coaches who passed through Brighton at a time when it did not have the stability it has now, right? He was a piece that never quite fit because, well, after 4 seasons belonging to the Eagles, he could only participate in a total of 8 matches. He did have several loan spells with varying degrees of success. Brighton signed him for €1.5 million to mainly play in the reserves, in the second Premier League, and the truth is that he did quite well. In 7 matches, he scored 5 goals. But for the next season, the 19-20 season, he would leave. The first stop of all the loans Victor Gyokeres had was in Germany, specifically at St. Pauli. He scored 7 goals with the second Bundesliga team, but in the end, he did not manage to fully establish himself in the starting 11 to return to his parent club, Brighton. For the next season, 2021, Victor Gyokeres' situation within the Brighton ecosystem was re-evaluated, and it was determined again that there was no place for him in the first team of the Seagulls. At that moment, Gyokeres rejected returning to the reserves and requested a new loan, which would come in this case with the opportunity at Swansea. It was a very short loan, much shorter than expected, because after just 12 matches and 1 goal scored, the Swedish Steve Cooper stated that despite his effort, despite being a boy with a lot of desire, who never showed a bad face, he did not quite fit into the team. And Brighton requested that he be returned, requested to revoke that loan which lasted only until April 3rd, months in his 11. Imagine Victor Gyokeres' situation at that moment, where at 22 or 23 years old, he was not fitting in, either at Brighton in the first division or at St. Pauli in the second division of Germany, nor at Swansea with only 12 matches played in 4 months. A moment when he has certain doubts about what his future will be. But then Coventry City arrives as the only team interested in the loan. Starting in January 2021, Brighton accepts that loan and the explosion of Gyokeres in Championship. The 21-22 season, which is his first season, half a season with Coventry City already allows him to score 18 goals in 47 championship matches. That's when he really started to perform. We began to see a Gyokeres who truly believed he could be the figure of a championship team. And above all, the most spectacular was the 22-23 season, in which they came just a step away from promotion to the Premier League, losing the playoff final on penalties against Luton Town, but being a super differential player for the interests of this Coventry City, which put him on the map as the revelation of that English second division. Look at this Opta graph from the 22-23 season, in which, as I said, they came just a step away from promotion with Coventry, losing that final against Luton Town in the playoff, where we can see how the majority of Joker's chances are inside the area as a predator, but there are also some red points that we can observe from outside the area. He was a player who was core of the attack for this team, generating a lot for Coventry City, and you can also see here that he scored 18 goals in that championship competition, but also with 16.5 expected goals, which means he scored more goals than expected. This refers a bit to the fact that, well, a chance that wasn't so clear, he turned it into a goal. You can see below that it is 4-2 minutes and 0.12 expected goals per shot. But we are also going to see another graph in which we will be able to assess the number of chances he generated for his team. Look at this other Opta graph that shows us he was the player in the championship most involved in attacks, in attacking sequences. He was the player who generated the most, the offensive phase of the entire league. Victor Gyokeres, for 202 minutes played, 133 shots. The player who made the most shots alongside Joel Pirou. 78 chances created and 37 in the build-up, which is a bit what precedes the final shot. A total of 248 attacking actions, with a certain distance already from Matt Grimes, who was second in the entire championship. This shows us that he was a player who had already grown a lot in prominence, above all, and that he was very clear that he could shoot in attack. Who sent from his team? That Coventry City, which is just a step away from reaching the Premier League. And at that moment, he gets his first great opportunity. The top European league. It was not going to be in the Premier League, despite being just a step away from promotion. He returned to Brighton, and at that moment, he received the offer from Sporting de Portugal. 24 million, 20 plus 4 in variables, were paid by the Lisbetas to a Brighton that, in this case, sold Ausand without having given him hardly any opportunities in their first team, after several loans, and with only 8 matches played with Brighton's first team. But 24 million, and many people labelled it as a certainly risky signing because he was a footballer who was already of a certain age. We are not used to, lately, despite it being normal, late explosions. I put it in quotes because in the end, he wasn't that old. A 24-year-old footballer who at that moment had had a very good season, 2 very good seasons in the second division, in the championship, which is a very tough division, surely has a higher level than many top divisions in other countries, but it was a risky signing. In the end, he had not been tested in the highest category of professional football, and Sporting de Lisboa was the club that trusted him to take him to their league. In the end, he completely dispelled all doubts, if anyone inside, any. Victor Gyokeres' first season in Portugal, and the figures are absolutely spectacular. In the 23-24 season, he scored 43 goals and 15 assists in 50 matches with the Luis Boeta team, or in other words, scoring a goal every 75 minutes. I mean, Victor Gyokeres' performance last season was spectacular. Also falling in the Europa League against an Atalanta that would eventually win the competition itself, so league champion went far in the Europa League. And above all, was the great revelation of European football in terms of goals and scoring production. 43 goals in his first season in Portugal, and currently, this year he has 24 goals, 4 assists in 21 matches. It's crazy what Victor Gyokeres has done in the short time he has been at Sporting, because it really is a season and a half, and although it is true that the Portuguese league does not have the level of other major leagues, like the Premier League, it is also true that there are nights when there are matches that change the careers of certain footballers. And in this case, I believe that the hat-trick he scored just 2 or 3 weeks ago against Manchester City, which is a spectacular hat-trick, showcases his goal-scoring instinct, speed in running, and finishing ability. 3 of the most important characteristics of this Victor Joker are that besides being a killer, he is also capable of drifting to the wings and can associate with relative ease. Although he is evidently a killer in the box, he is a player who guarantees you goals. And in this case, I believe that night, That hat-trick against Manchester City places him, if he wasn't already, in the spotlight for the big teams in Europe. The most likely scenario is that he will leave this coming summer, because despite having a $100 million release clause, The Athletic mentioned a few days ago that he could be let go for a figure close to $75 million. It is not very clear where it comes from, but these words from John Nichols, his teammate at Coventry, could be quite an interesting clue. Hannibal Lecter eats people and Victor destroys defenses, and here you see how the celebration is with both hands on the mouth, somewhat simulating Hannibal Lecter's mask. But Victor Gyokeres himself posted on Instagram a few months ago in which he stated that no one cared until he put on the mask. And that phrase is taken from one of Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, in which Bane, the villain played by Tom Hardy, says that same phrase in a scene on a plane. Those of you who have seen the movie will surely remember that Bane's words were those, and personally, it makes more sense to me that the celebration refers to Bane, the Batman villain, rather than Hannibal Lecter. But in any case, the celebration is already a characteristic gesture, and in terms of marketing, logically, that gesture is associated with Victor Joker. It is similar to how the celebration with open arms is associated with Jude Bellingham and so many other iconic ones in the world of football. His market value currently on Transfermarkt is $70 million. Why? If he is breaking all records and being a spectacular scorer, because he is 26 years old. And in the end, certain websites like Transfermarkt, which is by no means an official site, but is often used in the football world as a reference to assess or evaluate a player's real market value, also takes into account other aspects like age. In this case, as I said, although it is not normal, things like the Yamal coming out at 16 years old, like Pau Cubarsí, like Vinicius, ultimately it is a player who exploded at 25 years old in the Portuguese league, and that, whether you like it or not, has its influence on that specific parameter. But I believe it is unlikely that we won't see him in a top team next season. I list here several teams that I believe could fit him better in some way. Barca, logically, depends on Robert Lewandowski's performance. Right now, you can't take him out because he is one of the most outstanding in attack and has had a goal-scoring resurrection for many reasons. But if a medium-term substitute for Robert Lewandowski is considered, he could be that option. Logically, it is probably the most difficult due to FC Barcelona's economic situation and United, because personally, neither Xerxes nor Højlund fully convince me, especially because Ruben Amorim knows him, and Ruben Amorim has been the one capable of making him explode in the Portuguese league. Chelsea, although it seems that Nico Jackson is going to establish himself as a number 9, could also have him as a valued option because historically, in Chelsea's recent history, after Drogba, that is what this team has lacked. They didn't have Diego Costa, had several players, but no reference number 9, who has remained for many years, lately in the London team. And also Arsenal, because, well, we are seeing a Kai Havertz who may be at his best playing in that number 9 position or as a false reference, but there has also been a lot of talk about him because Gabriel Jesus does not fully convince. So I want you to leave me in the comments where you think the villain of Sporting Lisbon will end up. And that's it for the video. Friends of Mundo Maldini, I hope you liked it a lot. I hope you hit the like button. As you know, it helps us a lot with the algorithm. Share it and leave me in the comments where you think the good Victor Gyokeres will end up. Hug. Friends of Mundo Maldini, we continue with a lot of content as always. Tao, Tao, Tata. Ay. The rhythm of Tao is like a gentle melody, softly repeating and guiding us with its serene presence, flowing like a river, bringing peace.